We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Monday. We're starting out another week. Could be a little crazy this week. We're going from January to February this week. And Judge Engeron in Letitia James' lawsuit against Donald Trump for fraud is said to be planning to come back with a decision as to how much Donald Trump will owe the state of New York for this fraud lawsuit. Keep in mind, Letitia James has already won this. We're just trying to figure out how much Donald Trump is going to pay. Now, Letitia James is asking for $370 million and also banning Donald Trump for doing any business in New York. There's also going to be some claims against his family, his two sons, and the company itself. So this is going to be very interesting. And it's going to be pretty devastating, especially after seeing what Donald Trump did or didn't do when E. Jean Carroll's case just wrapped up, and he got hit with an $83.3 million verdict against him. That coupled with a previous $5 million verdict, so a total of $88 million. He's squirming now at that, but this next judgment will probably put him away for good. Does he have $450 million to pay? My guess is not, because Letitia James as much as said that he's pretty cash poor. He claims to have all this wealth, but it's more tied up in properties. And then the question is, how much equity does he have in these properties? I mean, has he leveraged them to the hilt? Knowing Donald Trump, that's probably the case. People are asking, can he file bankruptcy? Well, he can file bankruptcy, but he's got a couple of problems. First of all, that won't stop the need for payment in these lawsuits. He'll still have to pay for it. Secondly, if he files bankruptcy, that might get him into other legal problems, such as perjury. You see, in this last court case, he was asked how much cash he has available, and that was going to help determine, what the verdict would be. And he said he had $400 million. Well, if he's loses to the tune of $370 million in the Letitia James case, we know he already lost $88.3 million in the E. Jean Carroll case. That puts him like $450 million. Now, if he told the judge that he has $400 million and he files bankruptcy, that might be considered perjury. So Donald Trump's got a lot of problems, and it goes back to what we always know about Donald Trump. Just let that motherfucker talk, and he will destroy himself. Things aren't looking good for Donald. There are people who still support him, still think he's got a way out. He does not. There is no way out in this situation. He is done. Now, I don't normally talk about sports on this show, which is weird because when I started my career in broadcasting, I really expected to be a sports guy. I did play-by-play of hockey, basketball, baseball, football. I did a lot of sports shows, interview shows, call-in shows, and that sort of thing. I remember for a time when I was working in Arizona, that was probably the best experience I had, but the worst time I had. I worked at this little 5,000 watt daytime station. Now, what that means, it only broadcasts while the sun's up. Don't ask me why. It has to do with the signal and all that stuff. But I was the sports guy and I was doing sports. Unfortunately, sports usually runs at night: basketball, baseball, football. So what they would have me do is go out with a tape recorder, literally like a big reel-to-reel tape recorder, go do the play-by-play of the game, record it, and then it would run the next morning. And I thought, well, this is fucking hokey. I've never done a recorded play-by-play of a game. Who's going to listen to that? Well, surprise, surprise. Everybody in that town listened to it, because what the fuck else do you have to do in a 5,000 person town in the middle of fucking nowhere? That's all you got to do. And then to add to that, and I think this happens in every small town, they run the tape and then they send me to some cafe in town. I can't even remember the name of it. And you would go sit at a table, maybe have breakfast, and then you would do a live show with the coach and maybe some of the players of the team. And of course, it was called Coach's Corner. That's probably called Coach's Corner every fucking where in every small town, probably to this day. But anyway, I kind of go off on a tangent here, telling you my life story. But the reason I bring up sports is because I wanted to bring this up. We had a couple of big football games yesterday. Kansas City Chiefs beat the Baltimore Ravens. The San Francisco 49ers beat the Detroit Lions. And the reason that's important is because Kansas City and the 49ers will now be in the Super Bowl. And that isn't even the important part of it, why I bring it up here. The reason I bring it up here is that Kansas City and Travis Kelce are in the Super Bowl. Interesting, huh? But that means Taylor Swift is still in play. I know she's got some um, concert tour in the Far East, like Tokyo or something like that, around that time. But I'll bet you dollars to donuts. Now, there's an old guy saying that she'll be at the Super Bowl. And the reason I cherish that is because it pisses the Trumplefucks off. They keep saying, "Oh well, when they lose, everybody will blame Taylor Swift." Well, they're not losing, and even if they do, they're not going to blame Taylor Swift. You keep wanting to dismiss this girl and discredit her, but you can't because she's got more power than anybody in the NFL, including the fucking owners. So, I'm going to enjoy the Republicans shitting themselves as Taylor Swift shows up at the Super Bowl. And I don't really care who wins, but part of me wants the Kansas City Chiefs to win just so it pisses off the Republicans. Call me petty. I'm not opposed to accepting that. I've been called worse. But so Casey and San Francisco are in the Super Bowl, but more importantly, Taylor Swift is in the Super Bowl. So fuck you, Republicans. All right, we're going to start this off with emails as we tend to do. And the first one goes like this. Hello, Mike. It's been a while since I wrote you. I've been listening to you every day and always enjoy your show. That's why I think I've come up with a winning strategy for the Defeat the Orange Powdered Pumpkin. And she's got a list of things we should do. Number one, always put his legal situations in the form of a joke. I like that. Number two, keep calling him a lifetime loser by showing all his failures. That's a good idea. He's a narcissist. There's nothing worse for a narcissist than to tell them or show them that they are losers and they are failures. That'll drive him fucking nuts. Number three, keep showing his rallies with his MAGA airhead fans without people of color in the audience. I don't know that MAGA would care about that. They'd probably appreciate the fact, save for that bought and paid crew of black people for Trump. I can't believe that's a real thing. Anyway, number four, always show him being laughed at by the rest of the world leaders. Number five, give a head count of all the lawyers that work for him that are either under indictment or in jail or sanctioned or disbarred. I added those last two. Number six, keep showing those pictures of secret documents uh, uh, um, in the old and dire need for remodeling bathroom at his Roach Motel in Florida. Always have close up pictures of his hair and makeup. Oh man, the makeup's been rough lately. I don't know much about makeup, but his contouring is fucking horrible. Don't even ask me how I know that because my wife doesn't wear that much makeup. But I got grandniece who kind of does. Seven, always keep or always have close up pictures of his hair and makeup. I said that. Eight, ask the question over and over. Where's Melania? Number nine, ask him why he's afraid to debate. That's going to be a tough one. If he ends up being the nominee, he's going to be pushed to nominate or debate Nikki Haley if she stays in. And I think she will. What she got to lose, she's just waiting for that dumb fuck to keel over. Number 10, ask him what is the name of that fragrance he wears and laugh. Yeah, that's a French fragrance called Eau de Shit. The email goes on. I could go on and on, but this is how you weaken this guy. Make him see He is just underachieving C actor from a reality TV series searching for his validation among real celebrities. Oh, how he hates Obama's fame. I will recite this list to every Trumpican I run into. They don't have senses of humor. Thanks, Mike, for being such a fresh breath of truthful air. Your fan, Faye. Well, thank you, Faye, and you're a breath of fresh air anytime you send an email, so keep them coming. I appreciate it immensely. And I think Faye's on the right track here because of who Donald Trump is. Constantly embarrassing him or reminding him of his failures or just exposing him for the fraud he is the thing that's going to get to Donald Trump the most, the quickest. His head is already spinning at this point. He's losing it. You can tell when he gives his speeches that he's having trouble keeping track of everything. And we should keep it up. Like I say, I don't think he'll be able to handle the overwhelming amount of pressure that's dropping on his head at this point. You know, for a while, he's delusional. He's a narcissist. He can act like it isn't true or isn't there, but ultimately the pressure will get to be too much. I agree with you, Faye. That's a good idea. Next email. Hey, Mike, I don't suppose it's news to you, but why is everyone running around like they had their heads cut off because Manchin is stepping up the possibility of running as an independent? I know he's a Democrat by affiliation, but he hardly exemplifies left wing views. All I hear is this propaganda about how he's going to take no labels votes from Biden and possibly take enough of them to pave the way for Donald Trump. It's not happening, man. Every time Dirty Diaper Donnie speaks publicly now, he can actually see the shit ooze from his mouth and diaper. The more he speaks, the worse it gets, and he just can't seem to figure out how to shut the fuck up. Actually, at this point, it's become more entertaining than anything else. The only people who don't cringe every time he steps to the podium are his sycophant followers. There just aren't enough of them to do any damage anymore. I've heard you repeatedly state that he's not going to be the GOP representative, but at this point, wouldn't that be for the best? Agreed. I think the Republicans win in the 2024 presidential election regardless. I think they have the easiest time against Donald Trump. But here's the advantage to him not being the nominee. The Trump-a-fuck cult members will then probably just not vote. Biden would still win the election, but all the down ballot votes for senator, representative, governor, legislatures, they wouldn't get their votes either. So that would be a big plus for Democrats if Donald Trump just wasn't the nominee. Paul's the writer of this email. He goes on to say, let him get up there and start drooling and shitting himself in a debate. Even the few followers he still has are going to scare off eventually. Keep up the good work and good vibes, Mike. It's always a pleasure to get my news from you. I know it's accurate and reliable. Best wishes, Paul. I wanted to bring up this Manchin thing. I did a TikTok about it, and I find it funny that this is rearing its ugly head again. You remember back sometime, everybody was frightened about the idea of Joe Manchin running for president and doing it under the no labels party. Remember how that was a big thing? Everybody's scared. No labels, we find out, is pretty much funded by the Republicans. So the idea that they don't have any affiliation with either side is absolutely ridiculous. And Joe Manchin, he'd be the perfect one for them because we don't know what he identifies as. But it's cropped up again, and it's not surprising that it's cropped up again. And once again, people are fearful about it. And this is what I'm going to tell you about Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin as a politician is done. He's not running for reelection because he knows he's going to lose in his home state. So now we're supposed to be frightened that he's going to win the presidency or even take enough votes away from Biden for him to lose? Please, motherfucker. How does Joe Manchin win? He's a Democrat, but no Democrats like him. None of them. like him. Republicans aren't going to vote for him because, well, he's a Democrat. Um, the Republicans who want to hurt um, Joe Biden, if they decide to vote for him, they're just going to hurt Donald Trump. There's enough of a separation between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It's going to take a lot for Biden to lose to Trump if he's even the nominee. This is something we were worried about at one time, and then the No Labels Party said, "Yeah, we may not have a candidate." And Joe Manchin kind of faded away the first time. So why is it cropping up now? Well, once again, it sounds to me like some Republican messaging. See, that's the thing you have to understand. You hear all this stuff, and people are so afraid about this stuff they hear in the ether. But where do you think that shit came from? It came from the Republicans. That's how they do business. They throw bullshit out there hoping people will believe it. Now, the base will certainly believe it, but God damn it, don't you believe it. Please. How many times do you have to be fooled? How many times do you have to be hoodwinked? How many times do you have to be scared about bullshit? You were scared the first time with Manchin and the No Labels Party, then it just kind of disappeared. And now it's coming back up. And why? Because the Republicans are fucking flailing. They don't have anything else. They want to own the libtards. They want to scare them in hopes that Democrats will stay home or vote for Joe Manchin. Nobody's staying home, and nobody in the Democratic side is voting for Joe Manchin. Just not going to fucking happen. All right. The next one comes from Phil. This is the last email. Good afternoon from gloomy Long Island, Mike. I was on the treadmill at the gym yesterday when the damages were read. I roared out loud when I heard the figure. I'm sure I wasn't the only one either. I get a little nervous when a jury takes this long to come up with their numbers. Well, I had no idea it was going to be that high. Now, isn't this $83.3 million really just an appetizer as the entree, albeit the main course is yet to come probably this week? Judge Engeron? We know how much the judge has enjoyed having Donnie and his nitwit lawyer play games in his court. After this verdict comes down, I can imagine his plane will be covered in ketchup. These two verdicts ought to put him and his big mouth out of business, at least in New York. Phil. Well, first of all, the jury only took 3 hours to come back with that verdict. That isn't a very long time for that. So that's good news. They knew what they wanted to do and they took care of business right away. And in terms of $83.3 million being an appetizer, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I was talking about earlier. $83 million is a lot of money. It's a lot of scratch for somebody who's cash poor. But you throw another 350, 400, 450 on top of that, and that puts Donald Trump out of business. And this is what I've been saying all along. We can worry about the criminal trials and convictions there, but Donald Trump isn't anybody without his money, his power, and his property. And Judge Engeron, and I'll say it this way only because I have a place in Georgia, not because we do this in Minnesota. But Judge Engeron's fixing to take all his shit. And that's literally true. Now, we talked about the fact that he has to put up a bond for the 83 million. He'll have to do the same for the 370 or 450, whatever it ends up being. He'll have to put up a bond. He's going to have to go in his pocket and put up a lot of money in order to appeal. That's why I'm wondering if he just won't appeal. He'll try to get out of it one way or another. But that's not going to happen because if he doesn't pay, and he will have a short time to either appeal and post a bond or pay, they'll just start taking his shit. And as I've talked about before, you think, well, $400 million, he probably has that in properties. And in real values, maybe he does. But you know Donald Trump, don't you? I know Donald Trump. I know people like Donald Trump. None of those properties are paid off. They are leveraged to the fucking hilt. So if he has a $50 million building, that doesn't mean he gets $50 million taken off his bill. He may only have $10 million of equity. So that means you have to take more shit. This isn't going to pan out well for Donald Trump. I know how Donald Trump and people like him think. He likes to have a lot of money and then he wastes a lot of money. But in order to have a lot of money for him, he needs to leverage all this shit. And how do I know he did that? Well, that's what he's in court for, taking this shit, overestimating its value, and then taking the cash out of it. And God knows what he did with the cash. So you're absolutely right, Phil. $83 million was just the appetizer. The main course is coming probably this week, hopefully this week. And that's pretty much going to put him out of business, do away with any hopes or any plans for him to saying he's a billionaire right now, because they're probably going to take a $500 million away from him. And he wasn't a billionaire in the first place. All right, let's talk about Donald Trump a bit. Former President Donald Trump once again railed against the bipartisan border deal that they're working on in the Senate right now. He wrote in a Saturday morning True Social post, "Close the border." Well, it's interesting he should say that. President Joe Biden has already pledged to shut down the border if Congress would pass the border package, praising the deal in a statement meant to help salvage it Friday. See, that's the thing I was telling you about before. He has this budget plan. It's bipartisan. It's in the Senate. And of course, MAGA can find little things that they don't like about it. So they ramp it up and they say, shut down the border. And Biden says, okay, cool. We'll shut down the border. How about that? But like I told you before, if Joe Biden acquiesced to everything they asked for, they would still try to shut it down because the border isn't really their issue. They need a talking point. Donald Trump needs a talking point to fight against Joe Biden. Of all the things they could talk about, this one thing isn't a thing because Joe Biden's ready to take care of business as he needs to, and he's basically undercut the Republican Party. Now I'm sure they're spinning, trying to figure out how to spin this so they don't have to bend to Joe Biden. But here's what you need to know. Remember when Kevin McCarthy got tough about the budget thing and said, we're going to shut down the country? When he sat down with Joe Biden, he folded. Joe Biden got what he wanted. The country stayed open. So they fire him and they bring in Mike Johnson. He says the same thing. I'm sticking with MAGA. But when it came down to the negotiation, he folded, did what Biden needed. The country's still open. Same thing is going to happen with this border thing. Donald Trump has a weird mentality. He doesn't understand how people look at things. He just knows that he says whatever he says. So ultimately, when this comes out of the Senate and it's bipartisan and Joe Biden pledges to shut it down on the first day you sign this bill, how are you going to argue that? Well, Donald Trump will come up with some bullshit, but nobody in a reasonable mind would think that anybody would buy it. This is a problem for the Republican Party, and this is exactly what Joe Biden does. Joe Biden might be old and doddering and all that stuff, but he's been in this business a long time, and he's a smart motherfucker, and he's playing these Republicans at every fucking turn. Now, the yet to be finalized legislation would pair wartime aid to Ukraine and Israel with the border and immigration reforms meant to address the record influx of migrants on the southern border. A bipartisan group of senators has been working to pull it together literally for months. Now, Trump appears intent on tanking it, no matter what, even if he got everything he was asking for. This week, he called the compromise meaningless and a gift to the radical left Democrats and has directly pressured GOP lawmakers to kill it. And this is going to be tough for them to do. Again, the reason he sees this as a gift to the radical left Democrats because he refuses to let Joe Biden have a win. Unfortunately, Joe Biden's a lot smarter than Donald Trump, and Joe's going to get his fucking win, and Donald Trump is going to lose his shit. Literally, figuratively, and financially. The next coming weeks, not good weeks for Donald Trump. Trump allies, including Senator Ted Cruz, have echoed the former president's statements. Of course, Ted's going to get his ass kicked in 2024 as well. Now, this is prompting Democrats to accuse the Republicans of blatant hypocrisy, which seems to be accurate considering how long the GOP has spent calling for these measures. Now, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell this week told GOP senators that the politics on this have changed because of Trump's renewed push to make immigration his main 2024 campaign issues. So Mitch McConnell is owning up to it, and he's saying, look, it's our issue, so we can't give Joe Biden the win. This should make it very clear to the people, the constituents of this country, to see that, yeah, Republicans really aren't concerned about the border. They're concerned about having something to try to taint or smear Joe Biden, whether it be impeachment, whether it be Hunter Biden or the border. None of them are working. They've got no evidence for Hunter Biden and the impeachment, and Joe Biden's willing to give them what they want, essentially, not totally. But the problem is if they don't cut this deal, it's going to be a problem for Ukraine. It's going to be a problem for Israel. And that's the funny thing. MAGA wants to give money to Israel, but not Ukraine. But you're not going to be able to do one or the other, which is what they'd like to do. But and above that is the border issue. Joe's pretty much cornered these motherfuckers. They don't have a choice but to go along with Joe Biden and give Joe Biden the win. They'll kick about it down to the last minute of the last day like they always do, but they'll end up folding because they really have no choice. If they're going to use the border as a campaign issue and they refuse to shut down the border and do this border plan, that doesn't work for them. It doesn't fucking work. So once again, Joe Biden played these motherfuckers and they deserve it. Now, reportedly, McConnell said of Trump on Wednesday, we don't want to do anything to undermine him. Well, you don't have to do anything to undermine Donald Trump because he'll do it himself. Trump continued to bash the compromise on Truth Social, fear-mongering about terrorists supposedly pouring in, which isn't true. He wrote, a bad border deal is far worse than no border deal. Really? Expand on that, Donald. Tell me why you say that and what's bad about the other deal. Now, nobody will ask him that question, but somebody should, because you know he hasn't read the border deal because nobody's read the full border deal yet. It hasn't come out of the Senate. So how does he know it's bad? He doesn't. All he knows, it's bad for him. Now, while the text and the precise details of the deal have not been publicly released, Biden said in his Friday night statement that it would give him new power to close the border. What's been negotiated would, if passed into law, be the toughest and fairest set of reforms to secure the border we've ever had in our country. Well, that's formidable. Biden said in a statement, it would give me as president a new emergency authority to shut down the border when it becomes overwhelmed. And if given that authority, I would use it the day I signed the bill into law. Terms of the deal would, according to the New York Times, require the president to shut down the border if the number of migrants attempting to cross surpasses 5,000 on any given day. And, apparently it's already at that point. So he would have no choice but to shut it down. And that just puts the Republicans in a bad situation. He's going to give them exactly what he wanted to do. Now, in recent weeks, daily migrant apprehensions on the southern U.S. border have surpassed $10,000. $10,000. No, 10,000 people, migrants. So again, this puts the Republican in a bad situation. They're asking him to do certain things and complaining that he's not. But here we have a bill laying out pretty much everything that the Republicans want, plus getting money to Ukraine and Israel. The big problem, there's two big problems here. They don't want to give money to Ukraine, which is stupid. because we've got to shut down Vladimir Putin. Because if he rolls through Ukraine, then he's going to go to Poland, and we've got much bigger problems. Literally, a potential world war when NATO countries start getting involved. But beyond that, again, it's a matter of giving Joe Biden the win. This is the thing that's giving them the bad taste in their mouth. But when it's all said and done, they may not have a choice. Because remember, the fucking Republicans always bend because they're cowards, and they always lose because they're fucking idiots. So we'll see how this plays out. But I'm convinced that Joe Biden will get this bill done, and then let them complain that he doesn't do anything about the border. All right, we will take a quick break, and we will be right back. Well, on Saturday, Donald Trump resumed his rallies, this time in Nevada. And he's ranting and raving and upset about this verdict of $83.3 million. But you know what would I find funny about this? He didn't once mention E. Jean Carroll by name. Now, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer said leading up to this past trial, I mean, what's it going to take to shut Donald Trump up? And since that verdict has been announced, he hasn't mentioned E. Jean Carroll. So we apparently know what it takes to shut up Donald Trump, and that is $83.3 million. Anyway, he's in Nevada, and he's giving his talk, and he's ranting about the court case and all that stuff, not mentioning E. Jean Carroll. But he goes off on a tangent reminiscent of when he was president. Donald Trump declared that he doesn't believe NATO would be there for the U.S. if the country were to be attacked. Oh, we're back on the NATO thing. He definitely does not like NATO. And he claims it's because we put more money into it than any other country, and we're being used, so to speak. Donald Trump doesn't even know why NATO is there. NATO is basically a group of countries that come together that put a stumbling block and stop crazy, fucking villainous, murderous fucking dictators. Oh, like Vladimir Putin. It's kind of an insurmountable um, um, blockage to these people, because if they go start something with a NATO country, they've got about 10 countries that they have to fight against, and that slows them down. Yet somehow Donald Trump does not like NATO. Well, who else doesn't like NATO? Well, his BFF, Vladimir Putin, or any of the other strongman leaders. They don't like them because they aren't in it. And it stops their interests in terms of invading countries. So, whatever reason, Vladimir Putin talked to Donald Trump. Donald Trump believed what Vladimir Putin has said, doesn't understand what NATO is, and now he's against it. And now what he's trying to say is that if we were attacked, um, the NATO countries wouldn't be there. Well, how he knows that, I don't know. But let's be honest, if we need NATO to help us out, we're in big fucking trouble. Who do you think is going to attack the United States of America, save for some crazy fucks like on 9/11 or in Texas or Oklahoma, the bombing there? Um, our job in NATO is to be the big dog to scare people away from doing crazy shit. The likelihood of another country attacking us is so slim, it's ridiculous. And I'm talking about Russia too. The only thing Russia has now or claims to have is all these nuclear weapons, but they don't have a lot of money. And are they maintaining those weapons, or are they just fucking dud silos sitting there they're using as leverage? Who knows? And I wouldn't want to put that at risk to test it out. But the point is the likelihood of we are going to be attacked by another country, pretty slim. But if that did happen, NATO's kind of all NATO countries are responsible to get together and help out a country that's being attacked. So they would, but I don't think that's a reasonable thought because it's not going to happen. Now, at a Las Vegas rally on Saturday, the former president knocked Joe Biden's push for a bipartisan Senate deal on border security that linked to Ukraine aid, claiming that it's designed to continue the invasion of America while sending billions of dollars to other countries. And that's always the complaint that I hear from Trumpophobes. Well, how do you like us sending all these billions of dollars to other countries? Well, the fact is, if it's in our best interest, I don't have a problem with it because we spend trillions of dollars to wealthy people who don't need the fucking money. We spend almost $1 trillion in a defense budget that is so top heavy, it's ridiculous. We don't need to spend that much. It's just all putting monies into military contractors. He went on to claim that the U.S. has provided $200 billion plus to Ukraine, while European nations are in for $20 billion, disregarding facts on aid to Ukraine since Russia invaded the country in February. We're paying for NATO, and we don't get much out of it, said the Republican Party frontrunner, who once called NATO obsolete and has campaigned on finishing the process of reevaluating the purpose and mission of NATO. Now, Donald Trump doesn't know much about fuck all. Why would he be bringing this up? The only reason is because some guy in Russia patted him on the back, said he was a genius, and said, you know what? It'd be really smart for you to say that NATO is bullshit. Why don't you do that? And that's exactly what Donald Trump did. He goes on to say, and you know, I hate to tell you this about NATO. If we ever needed their help, let's say we were attacked, I don't believe they'd be there. Based on what, Donald? Based on what? You just say shit and you expect people to believe you. Anybody with an above average intelligence will not believe you. He continued, I don't believe I know the people. I know them. I can tell you country by country who would be there and who, but I don't believe they'd be there. Well, give us some names, Donnie. I bet you can't remember the fucking names. Now, journalist Aaron Rupar, who shared a clip of Trump's remarks on X, formerly Twitter, of course, pointed out that NATO invoked Article 5 in its founding treaty for the first time following the 9/11 attacks, helping America. The article describes an armed attack against one member as an attack against them all. This is what we have to deal with. Donald Trump wants to upend or end a program that's been very valuable not only to us but the entire country and help to keep peace in the world. But he wants to get rid of that. Not because he knows anything about fucking anything. It's because Vladimir Putin and maybe some of these other quote unquote strongmen have pushed him to do it. All they have to do is pat him on the back and pet him on that fucked up wig on his head and say, Donnie, you're so smart. You're the best. Why don't you do this for us? And Donnie will hop to like a fucking dog standing on his haunches, begging for more attention. Now, according to a report from the Daily Beast's Roger Sollenberger, a bombshell footnote in documents filed by the special monitor appointed by the court in the $370 million Donald Trump financial fraud is raising questions about a $50 million Trump loan that may or may not exist. Oh, there might be some hocus pocus going on with money regarding Donald Trump. Oh, that's a big surprise. There's so much concern about this that has ethics and tax experts suggesting the former president has been engaging in tax fraud. Oh, that's a big surprise. According to the report, former federal judge Barbara Jones included a major revelation in the footnotes in a report on the court financial status of the Trump organization, telling the court, when I inquired about this loan, I was informed there was no loan agreements that memorialized the loan, but it was a loan that was believed to be between Donald J. Trump individually and the Chicago unit acquisition for $48 million. I don't even know what the fuck that is. She then added, however, in recent discussions with the Trump organization, it indicated that it has determined that this loan never existed, and thus it would be removed from any upcoming forms submitted to the Office of Government Ethics and would also be removed from subsequent versions of corporate financial statements. How does that slip your mind? $50 million. Did I borrow it? Did I not borrow it? If I did borrow it, who did it come from? What do we do with it? How come there's no paperwork? You see how that might be problematic. Now, as Solenberger wrote for The Beast, if true, that would essentially be an admission from the Trump organization that all the financial disclosures Trump has filed with the federal government listed an entirely fictional debt worth tens of millions of dollars, which Trump claimed he personally owed to one of his own companies. Yeah, that sounds like a little bit of tax fraud. How much of a write off do you get for a $50 million loan? Now, Alan Garten, chief legal counsel for the Trump organization, pushed back at the assertion, saying in an interview, that's one of many inaccuracies contained in the monitor's letter, which he will be addressing with the court, before admitting, yes, the loan existed. Well, 1 minute it exists, the next minute it doesn't exist. You know, when they start talking in circles, you know there's a problem there. Now, Jordan Leibowitz of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, a group called CREW, claimed that conflicting information suggests something is not right. Yeah, I guess. When you fill out your personal financial disclosure, you attest under penalty of law that the information is true. Trump had to know that his Chicago businesses never gave him a loan for more than $50 million, as he claimed repeatedly. He told Solenberger before adding, while the reasons behind claiming this fake loan are still unknown, at the very least, he misled the government for years about his finances. It appears that Trump knowingly and intentionally broke the law. The only question is, how many laws? Now, D.C. tax lawyer Martin Lobel also claimed there appears to be some law breaking based on the new filing, stating it would appear, assuming Judge Jones' letter is accurate, that this amounts to tax evasion. Isn't that what got Al Capone? It seems kind of small when you think about the 91 felonies he currently has, but why not? Let's pile another one on the fucking pile. Now, former President Trump also is yapping about Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, of knowing the decision in his fraud trial ahead of time. How does he know that? In a Sunday morning rant on his Truth Social platform, Trump pointed out that the New York Supreme Court Justice Arthur Engoron is expected to rule on this case in the coming days. Trump faces accusations of manipulating property values for financial gain. And of course, he goes on and says, I did nothing wrong. No jury allowed, all in caps. Well, he clearly did something wrong because he's already been found liable for it. And there is no jury because your dumbass lawyer didn't check a fucking box. He goes on to say great financial statements, which were very conservative and the opposite of the charge. No victims, no fraud, no crimes, happy banks and insurance company, only success and profits, Trump wrote, repeating earlier claims about the case. Yeah, but you lied. You committed fraud. The facts are the facts. He goes on to say, and a corrupt NYS Attorney General, he continued, who sat comfortably and confidently in court with her shoes off, arms folded, a Starbucks coffee, and a big smile on her face, just like she knows exactly what the decision will be. Well, yeah, she knows that you're going to get nailed because she did her job and the evidence is fucking there. I'm sure she does feel pretty confident of this case. I mean, you were already found liable. Now it's just a matter of find out how much you have. But see, this is what he does. He tries to create chaos and confusion. Well, she already knew about it, so the fix is in. Now, she just knows she's going to win. She's just waiting for the fun surprise to find out how much she's going to get. Now, Trump called closing the arguments by the state pathetic. No witness and no evidence against me, he exclaimed. The judge is being badly influenced and the gag order must come off. Remember, this judge ruled against me before the trial even started, and he knows nothing about the case. The public is angry over this hoax. This trial is rigged. Well, I tell you what, it depends on what you call the public, because the vast majority of the public are sitting back and giggling like schoolgirls, waiting for you to get your comeuppance. Most people are happy about this, that you finally got caught and finally are going to be accountable for the bullshit you've done for fucking decades. All right, we talked about this in the emails, but I'll bring it up again because I know a lot of people are freaked out about it. Senator Joe Manchin is sending up smoke signals that he's preparing to run for president and taking shots at the White House in the process. Little Joey Manchin apparently is sad because he's not getting the attention that he wants. Nobody cares about Joe Manchin anymore. When he was the pivot point in the Senate and voting against Democrats, he got all the attention. And apparently, he got used to that. Now he's not getting any attention. So Joe's saying, I'm going to run for the White House. Well, you said that once before and then you went away because nobody cared. Joe Manchin is not running for reelection in the Senate in his own state because he can't get reelected. He's going to lose. So now he has to try to stick a poker in and try to create some interest in him. Joe, you're of no interest to anybody. Nobody fucking cares. After January 6th or so of 2025, you're gone. Nobody cares. Go back to your fucking houseboat or whatever, but just don't come back this way. Now, in a new interview with CNN, the outgoing West Virginia senator said he can absolutely see himself as president. Well, you'd be the only one. You're the only one that can see you as president. You're not going to be president. You don't have enough support. CNN's Edward Isaac Dovere detailed the reason why Manchin is becoming increasingly open about the White House bid. Manchin called the president a good, decent man, but said he worries about a second Biden term with a White House staff who he believes is dominated by a group of far-left liberals. He calls the prospect of a Trump return to the White House very much concerning to every human being and every person who basically loves the country that we have, and that life and that the life that we have and trying to have a future of our children and future generations. Well, you see what he's doing. He's trying to appeal. I don't think he's as much looking at trying to get in a third party because he knows he can't win with a third party. No third party has ever won. But he's kind of laying it out there a little bit in hopes, much like Nikki Haley, that Donald will keel over or drop out for some reason, and maybe he can switch parties and they'll put him in as the candidate. Maybe thinking that he'd be a stronger candidate than Nikki Haley, and he has a couple of things that Nikki Haley doesn't have. He's a man and he's white. I don't know. It sounds crazy. And the whole concept wouldn't work because Republicans don't like him either. But I think the Republicans already know that come 2024 in November, they don't have a chance with regards to the White House. Now, Dovere reports that if Manchin runs, he'd want to take the spots on state ballots being secured by the centrist No Labels group. And that's the hilarious thing. No Labels is not centrist. It's backed by fucking Republicans. And the whole point of it is to try to disrupt an election and take votes away from Joe Biden. I just don't think that would happen. First of all, Joe Manchin doesn't have a lot of support. No Democrats like the motherfucker. If anybody voted for him, it might be Republicans, just not stomaching the possibility of voting for Donald Trump. What they're trying to do is pick up the people who are running away from Donald Trump so they can keep some Republican votes. But that's not going to change the Democrats' votes. And frankly, that's all the Democrats need is the Democratic vote and some independents, and they're going to win. If there's a big turnout, it always goes the way of the Democrats, and we know it's going to be a big turnout. Now, that group, according to CNN report, is experiencing internal turmoil on a number of fronts, including whether to have a Democrat or Republican atop of their ticket. According to CNN, Biden and top aides are keeping their distance from Manchin, ultimately hoping that he decides against an independent run. Yeah, I mean, they probably prefer that he doesn't, but I don't think he's a big threat at this point. Now, it's interesting. A Republican senator who has been working on the bipartisan border deal is starting to now talk some shit at GOP colleagues for trying to tank it. I mean, I would think if you spent these months trying to craft this border plan and now your own people are trying to take you down, that might piss you off. Now, an interview on Fox News Sunday with anchor Shannon Bream, Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, a Republican, um, he was the lead negotiator on a bipartisan border deal, sounded off about what he says are misconceptions about the specifics. And that's the ironic thing, as I've said, they've never seen this before, so how can they bitch about it? Specifically, he took on comments from Senator Ted Cruz, who claimed the agreement would normalize 5,000 migrants per day being allowed to cross the border. Right now, these internet rumors is all about people are running on. Langford said, it would be absolutely absurd for me to agree to 5,000 people a day. This bill focuses on getting us to a zero illegal crossings a day. There's no amnesty. It increases the number of Border Patrol agents, increases asylum officers. It increases the detention beds so we can quickly detain them and then deport individuals. It ends catch and release. It focuses on additional deportation flights out. It changes our asylum process so the people get a fast asylum screening at a higher standard and then get returned back to their home country. This is not about letting 5,000 people in a day. This is the most misunderstood section of the proposal. But leave it to the Republicans to try to mislead people and try to scare them into the horrors that Joe Biden wants to do on the border. Joe knows there's a problem on the border and he wants to do something. He's wanted to do something from the moment he got into office, but the Republicans have shut him down at every turn. So this isn't about Joe Biden unwilling to do something with the border. This is about the Republicans shutting down Joe Biden so they have something to complain about when it comes to Joe Biden. Now, later in the interview, Bream focused on the political ramifications of a deal. This week, some Republicans have flat out admitted that the part of the GOP concern about a deal would be to potentially boost President Joe Biden. Yeah, they're saying the quiet shit out loud. A lot of Republicans are saying Biden has things he could use now, executive powers and laws that are not being enforced, Bream said. So why give him this in an election year? The cover of this deal that critics say is still going to let a lot of people in, but he gets to take a victory lap and he's gotten something done. Fact is, he's got a lot done. This is just one of many. Now, Langford called out his Republican colleagues. It's definitely not going to let a bunch of people in, Langford said. This is a Republican. It's focused on actually turning people around on it. It is interesting. Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. So we actually locked arms together and said, we're not going to give you money for this. We want a change in law. And now it's interesting. A few months later, when we're finally going to that end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want a change in law because it's a presidential election year. You ever notice that? They did the same thing. They did the same thing with the Chief Justice. Oh, we or not the Chief Justice, the Supreme Court Justice. Oh, we can't even consider Merrick Garland because we're in an election year. That was their rule that they made up. But of course, when Donald Trump was in his last year, they sure as hell brought in Amy Coney Barrett. They like rules and laws, but only when they apply to Democrats and not Republicans. That's how they do business. And now Republicans are even getting frustrated with this bullshit. We got a lot of people yapping about what's going on in the Middle East and Iran. Iran clearly is backing the people in Gaza. What am I trying to say? And they, of course, are being um, backed by Russia. Anyway, President Biden on Sunday vowed to respond after 3 U.S. troops were killed in an Iranian backed drone strike in Jordan on Saturday. At a speaking engagement in South Carolina on Sunday, Biden held a moment of silence for those 3 soldiers. We had a tough day last night in the Middle East. We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases, Biden said. And we shall respond, he added, shortly after holding a moment of silence at the Brooklyn Baptist Banquet Center at a church Sunday lunch as he made a swing through the state over the weekend. Now, Biden's remarks come after he confirmed early Sunday that a drone strike killed 3 service members and injured at least 24 more in Jordan near the border with Syria and Iraq, where the troops were stationed. Now, Biden said in an earlier statement that the attack was carried out by radical Iran backed militant groups. The attack marks the first deaths of the U.S. service members by enemy combatants in the Middle East since the start of the Israel Hamas war, though several bases have been under attack in that region. The Pentagon called the strike a one-way suicide drone attack on patrol base. Biden and Vice President Harris were briefed on the attack by their national security team. Now, there's a lot of people on the Republican side saying, we got to bomb Iran, we got to bomb Iran. These are warmongers, war hawks, if you will. Bombing Iran probably isn't the answer, but I'll tell you this, I don't know what he's going to do, but Joe Biden is going to respond, and those motherfuckers will feel the sting. We're going to wrap things up here in a bit, but I just wanted to tell you this story. This is disgusting and hilarious at the same time. Rudy Giuliani defended Donald Trump with wild on-air remarks after a jury ordered the former president to pay $83.3 million in damages to E. Jean Carroll on Friday. He's probably a little envious because the 2 ladies down in Georgia got $146 million out of him. Now, Trump's one-time personal attorney in an interview with Newsmax, Rob Schmidt, declared the legal system has gone to hell before calling U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan, who oversaw the Carroll defamation case, a pure disgrace. Yeah, but they took your license away, Rudy. But Kaplan, who's a judge in good standing, is the one that's a disgrace. You may want to look in the mirror on this one because, frankly, Rudy, you are a disgrace amongst disgraces. Now, last year, Kaplan presided over a separate trial in which a jury found that the former president liable for sexually abusing Carroll, who has maintained that Trump raped her in the 1990s and awarded her $5 million in damages. Now, get this quote from Rudy. This is the funny and disgusting part. First of all, he was found not guilty or not liable for rape, Giuliani said. It was sexual assault, not rape. Oh, well, that makes it all so much better. And second, you can be guilty of rape and still a person can be a wacko, added Giuliani. Oh, you want a defamation suit too? Sounds like you're asking for it. Giuliani, who himself recently ordered to pay millions in an unrelated defamation case. You think you would have learned a lesson, Rudy? Although the jury in last year's Carroll trial did not find Trump liable for rape, Kaplan has said that this does not mean that she failed to prove that Mr. Trump raped her, as many people commonly understand the word rape. Kaplan said that the jury's decision stemmed from the narrow technical meaning of rape in New York penal law. He added that the rape claim was substantially true under common modern parlance. Critics on social media mocked the on air defense from Trump's former personal attorney, saying that he can't tell the difference between a hotel and a garden center. Rudy sure isn't doing Trump any favors, one person said, while another simply wrote, "Yikes." You would think at this point Rudy Giuliani just shut his fucking mouth, take his medicine, and hope he survives. He won't, but he would hope he would survive. But he's got to wade into this. Now, the interesting thing is that Donald Trump is kind of tied to this lawsuit that Rudy Giuliani lost. These two ladies down in Georgia are going to go after their $146 million. And if he can't pay cash, they're going to be taking property and seizing property. Now, one of the things that they'll try to go after too is money owed to Rudy Giuliani. You know, what would they call that? They would call, well, whatever bills have not been paid yet. They'll attach all that to it. And you know who's got a big bill with Rudy Giuliani? Donald Trump. Remember, he hired him as a lawyer, then decided never to pay him. Well, now these ladies down in Georgia can go after his ass, meaning Donald Trump's ass, to get that money as well. Isn't that karma? He'll even have to pay for at least part of Rudy Giuliani's lawsuit. And then Rudy will finally get money out of Donald Trump. I just don't understand what Rudy Giuliani's allegiance to Donald Trump is at this point. Donald Trump has basically kicked him to the curb, refused to pay him, but somehow this dumb fuck still wants to support him. And somehow he thinks by saying it wasn't rape, it was only sexual assault, that makes it all better. Makes you wonder how many sexual assaults Rudy Giuliani ever committed. I'm guessing a bunch, and maybe we'll find out about that at some point down the road. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. Hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.